On Monday, President's Day, close to 1 million people across the United States protested against Donald Trump in a movement reportedly called Not My President's Day. Thousands of flag-waving protesters lined up outside Central Park in Manhattan, while in Chicago, several hundred rallied across the river from the Trump Tower. Many also marched through Midtown Atlanta for a Georgia-themed rally titled Impeach Trump Now. Hundreds of people also reportedly marched through Salt Lake City, Utah, against Trump and his administration's stance on such issues as the environment, Russia, immigration, and free speech.
He should come here on business or other matters, but he shouldn't be accorded the rare privilege of a state visit.
There is something quite refreshing about a politician actually doing what they said they'd do before they were elected.
If they wanted more of the same or the usual stuff, well, that was on the ballot paper.
There are many African Americans in America sitting at home in fear. They are concerned about a president that has had the support of the Ku Klux Klan.
And this debate ought to be about more than the personal qualities of any individual.
The UK Parliament debated whether or not to rescind the invitation to President Donald Trump for a state visit. A state visit is more prestigious than an official visit since it involves the Queen and a lot of pomp and circumstance. Only 2 presidents since the 50s have received such an honor. Prime Minister Theresa May invited Trump to a state visit only 1 week after his inauguration. 2 petitions led to the debate. One with 300,000 signatures defended May's decision to invite Trump for a state visit. The second, which opposed Trump's state visit as an embarrassment to the Queen, was signed by more than 1.8 million people. Even though the debate lasted nearly 3 hours, it was mostly for show. The British government has already rejected the petition to block Trump's state visit.
Last month, U.S. President Donald Trump reinstated a policy requiring overseas organizations that receive U.S. family planning funds to certify they do not perform abortions or provide abortion advice as a method of family planning. In January, the Netherlands started a global fund to help women access abortion services, saying Trump's global gag rule meant a funding gap of $600 million over the next 4 years. Prime Minister Ernest Solberg said, "The government is increasing its support for family planning and safe abortion by 85 million Norwegian crowns, or $10 million compared with 2016. Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, Luxembourg, Finland, Canada, and Cape Verde have also lent their support." Solberg said in a statement, "At a time when this agenda has come under pressure, a joint effort is particularly important."
The Associated Press reports last year Utah enacted a first-in-the-nation law requiring that fetuses receive anesthesia or painkillers before elective abortion starting at 20 weeks gestation. 9 months later, the only licensed clinic providing those abortions in the state says no changes have been made in how doctors perform the procedures. The handful of doctors who do the abortions at the clinic run by the Planned Parenthood Association of Utah are trying to comply with the law passed last May, but it contained no specific guidance on how to do so, said Kerry Galloway, the group's CEO.
Hundreds of migrants storm a border fence to enter EU territory in North Africa. Some 700 people attempted to cross the 20-foot-high fence separating Morocco from the Spanish enclave of Ceuta early on Monday, February 20th. Local authorities said more than 350 managed to break through. The Red Cross reported 11 migrants were injured in the chaos. 1 migrant and 2 police officers were taken to hospitals with serious injuries. Monday's incident comes on the heels of another lapse in border security at the site. Some 500 migrants broke through into Ceuta on Friday in what officials called the biggest border invasion in recent years. Some 1,400, mostly sub-Saharan African migrants, are now waiting at an immigration center in Ceuta. Reuters says many will likely be sent back to Morocco or their point of origin. Ceuta, along with another Spanish territory called Melilla, holds the EU's only land borders with Africa. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Camry Caldwell.
'Caldwell. 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 'Caldw The U.S. Navy has deployed an aircraft carrier and a guided missile destroyer to the South China Sea. The Pentagon announced Saturday, February 18th, that the USS Carl Vinson and the USS Wayne E. Meyer were sent to the South China Sea on, quote, routine operations. The move comes despite warnings from Beijing not to challenge its sovereignty. A spokesman for China's foreign ministry said of the deployment, quote, Beijing firmly opposes any country's attempt to undermine China's sovereignty and security in the name of the freedom of navigation and overflight. According to Navy Times, the U.S. Navy plans to sail within 12 nautical miles of China's newly built artificial islands in the South China Sea, a move which would amount to a challenge to Beijing's maritime claims in the region. The U.S. military has deliberately sailed close to Chinese-occupied islands at least 4 times since October 2015. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
China has indisputable sovereignty over the islands in the South China Sea and their adjacent waters. China respects freedom of navigation by the international community in accordance with international law. However, China firmly opposes utilizing this freedom as an excuse to infringe upon its territorial sovereignty and security interests. With the joint efforts made by China and ASEAN countries, peace and stability in the South China Sea are consistently improving. China hopes that countries outside the region can respect these efforts and promote positive impetus. China urges the U.S. not to take any actions to challenge China's sovereignty and security, and to respect the efforts that countries in the region make to maintain peace and stability.
The U.S. Army announces it will deploy 1,000 troops to Poland by the end of March. The announcement came February 18th from the U.S. Army's European headquarters in Germany. The troops and their accompanying vehicles will be deployed to the Polish town of Orzysz in the northeastern part of the country, where they will coordinate with the Polish troops. The town is just 85 miles from the border with Kaliningrad, a Russian military exclave on the Baltic Sea. This deployment is part of NATO's Atlantic Resolve mission, which places U.S. troops in countries across NATO's eastern flank. Poland also received around 3,500 troops and 87 tanks in January as part of a 9-month deployment. This announcement came the same day U.S. Vice President Mike Pence spoke to a security conference in Munich, assuring European leaders of the U.S. commitment to NATO. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
The South China Sea has been teeming with activity. On February 17th, China concluded a week-long training session in the waters. The scheduled drill saw a deployment of a guided missile destroyer, ocean supply ships, helicopters, and special combat soldiers. On February 6th, China responded warmly to U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis' suggestion that diplomacy should be the priority in the South China Sea.
China and ASEAN countries make joint efforts to safeguard peace, security, and stability in the region. We have said this accords with the common interests of China and all countries in the region, and we hope that countries outside the region can respect the common interests and wishes of the countries in the region.
But that was not the White House position in late January.
I think areas in the South China Sea that are part of international waters and international activities, I think the U.S. is going to make sure that we protect our interests there. So it's a question of if those islands are in fact in international waters and not part of China proper, then yeah, we're going to make sure that we defend international territories from being taken over by one country.
China responded with its usual stance on the issue, reiterating its resolution to protect its sovereignty and maritime rights in the South China Sea.
We have always said that China resolutely recognizes the freedom of navigation enjoyed by all countries in accordance with international law. But we oppose the rights to navigate that are based on their own illusion. We will resolutely support freedom of navigation as long as it's in line with international law.
So is there hope for calm, steady waters? Sun Ye, CGTN.
Pakistan beefs up its air force with the welcoming of 16 new fighter jets. The JF-17s can carry up to 8,000 pounds of weapons and can fly up to 1,370 miles per hour. The new jets were unveiled February 16th in a ceremony attended by high-ranking Pakistan military officials. Defence Minister Khawaja Asif said Pakistan is a peace-loving country but wishes to protect its borders from aggression. Pakistan has a contentious history with its neighbour India, which has an air force with more than 2,000 aircraft. Pakistan has only just over 900. Pakistan Air Chief Marshal Sohail Aman said the country remains committed to providing its own defence in the future. However, Gulf News says he thanked China for providing relentless support to Pakistan as they help manufacture the new fighter jets. Pakistan will also receive 4 attack helicopters from Russia later this year. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham. China has put actions in place to suspend all imports of coal from North Korea. As part of its efforts to implement United Nations sanctions against the country, this suspension is to be effective February 19th until December 31st, 2017. South Korean's Yonhap news agency reported last week that a shipment of North Korean coal worth around $1 million was rejected at a port on the eastern coast of China. The New York Times reported that officials of the United States and its allies have suggested that China should be more aggressive in enforcing sanctions. While China does not approve of the North's weapon program, they have also been seen as reluctant to inflict crippling pain on North Korea. They fear that it might destabilise its communist neighbour. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
At least 2 tornadoes have hit parts of San Antonio, damaging dozens of homes but causing no major reported injuries. A survey team from the National Weather Service has confirmed that a tornado struck a residential area around 5 miles north of downtown San Antonio between Sunday night and Monday morning. San Antonio Fire Department spokesman Woody Woodward said 43 homes were damaged in the area, including 3 that collapsed. He also said that there were 5 minor injuries reported.
As another round of storms pummeled the state, residents of northern and central parts of California prepared Monday for possible flooding and landslides. The state has already been drenched by weeks of rain. More than 14 million people are under a flood warning or flash flood watch. Residents have been advised to prepare for evacuations. CNN meteorologist Dave Hennon said 6 to 10 inches of rain could fall from San Francisco eastward before the storm tapers off midweek. The National Weather Service reported the strong Pacific storm is also expected to bring howling winds and mountain snow Monday to central and northern parts of California.
The first delivery of Chinese humanitarian aid to Afghanistan this year has arrived in the capital, Kabul. A second delivery will arrive on Saturday. The aid includes clothes, tents, and quilts worth about $2 million. Snowstorms and avalanches killed dozens of people in the north of Afghanistan over the weekend.
Scientists have discovered that eating seafood that is laden with mercury could cause someone to develop ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. They also discovered that the 2 sea creatures most likely to give someone ALS are swordfish and sharks. Dr. Elijah Stommel, who is the author of the study, stated, "For most people, eating fish is a part of a healthy diet, but questions remain about the possible impact of mercury in fish." Stommel's team made the assessment that individuals who eat seafood more readily are twice as likely to develop ALS than someone who rarely eats fish.
Greece agrees to discuss new economic reforms as conditions for a potential bailout from its creditors. Creditors told Greece February 20th the country has made enough progress that it can steer policy away from further austerity measures and instead focus on deeper economic reforms. A top Eurozone official said, quote, "There could be fiscal space for growth-enhancing measures. That means Greece can possibly cut taxes and spend more, which is opposite of its recent economic strategy to dig itself out of debt." The International Monetary Fund had demanded a shift away from austerity measures as a condition for it to become involved in a possible bailout. Greece and its creditors are scheduled to meet again in Athens next week to discuss reforms. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
The U.S. had 3 of the most congested cities in the world last year, and we bet you can guess which ones. Coming in at number 1 was Los Angeles, where drivers spend an estimated 104 hours stuck in traffic during rush hour periods. Moscow ranks second with 91 hours stuck in traffic, but New York and San Francisco were close behind with 89 and 83 hours spent stuck in peak traffic, respectively. Traffic is more than just frustrating. The analytics firm that compiled the numbers also note the cost of sitting in traffic. We're talking about the price of gas and the value of the time being wasted for everyone on the road. But for businesses, the fees associated with that idle time usually get transferred to the consumer through higher prices. The report estimates congestion cost each Los Angeles driver just over $2,400 last year. New York drivers suffered even more at $2,500. A senior economist at the firm called traffic a double-edged sword. The U.S.'s economic recovery and low gas prices have helped keep the cost of traffic lower, but those same benefits are causing more people to drive. As a country, the firm estimates traffic congestion cost the average American driver almost $1,400 last year.
According to new scientific analysis, there is no safe place for Africa's forest elephants. Even in the isolated wilderness of Gabon, elephants are vulnerable to poachers. More than 25,000 of Gabon's elephants, which is about 80%, were killed between 2004 and 2014. Another study conducted in 2013 found that numbers across Central Africa dropped 62% since 2002. Conservation scientist Fiona Maisel said the loss of elephants at this site is even graver than we thought. Scientists say that to save the elephants, cross-border law enforcement measures and patrols are urgently needed.